Klarna is in the headlines for walking back its ambitious plans to automate customer service with AI. But its CEO Sebastian Siemiatkowski is here today to say the company is actually accelerating those efforts and push back against the headlines. Sebastian, we last spoke a year ago. It's great to see you again. Thank you for coming in for a quick check-in and a bonus episode to talk about what's actually going on with Klarna's AI efforts. Good to see you.
Good to see you. It was funny pushing back against my own claims. It's just it feels like, I don't know. It's funny though.
Well, yeah. So I think that the reason why I wanted to do this interview is because we spoke a year ago about your effort to automate what you then said was 700 customer service jobs with AI. Now, it was part of a broader AI initiative within the company. And there have been some recent headlines that have talked about how Klarna is now pulling back from that effort. Like, our conversation was all about, is this real? You convinced me that it was real. And now there are headlines that Klarna is pulling back. But in the time since those headlines have come out, you've actually gone on to Twitter and talked about how actually Klarna is not pulling back from this program. And you wrote, we are actually accelerating it. So what is the truth? Is there going to be, is this the end of handing customer service over to AI at Klarna, or is it the beginning?
Well, we can start with where does the confusion come from? So I did an article with Bloomberg where we talked about a number of aspects to AI and customer service. And actually, if you read the original Bloomberg article, it's quite balanced and describing quite accurately what I said and what happened. But then what tends to happen in classic media is that they take just the headline of that, and then somebody just quotes the headline without reading the actual article, and then that gets a lot of errors are built up on errors, and then suddenly, for whatever reason, this seemed to have been a very interesting topic in the world. I'm surprised how many people got engaged with this. So let me give you what's actually going on, the truth, and the truth is that two things can be true at the same point of time. So, which my wife always says, and I think it's a smart saying, helps a lot when you quarrel with your wife sometimes. You realize that there isn't actually anything to quarrel about. But the point being is that there are two things, right? Klarna is very much leaning into AI, and obviously customer service is one area where that's the case. Our agent that we launched about a year ago is still dealing with, I think it is about 1.3 million errands per month, which is the equivalent of previously was done by about 800 people on a monthly basis. And so that is obviously, and it's actually gone up a little bit. It used to be about 700, now it's about 800. Now, with that said, again, media has tendency to kind of simplify things, and it's the message. We always said, and there's always been in podcasts like this, I've been very honest about the fact that some of those errands were very simplistic, right? They could have been, hey, did I pay to Klarna? Have you received my payment? The answer was yes. And then that was the end of the errand. So I think from if you are doing let's say advanced merchant support with technical integrations, that is obviously something that is more challenging to offer over an AI than the kind of question that I just described, right? So AI to us initially Klarna was not necessarily the best company in the world when it comes to IVRs and FAQs and so forth.
Right.
A lot of companies implement these things. Yeah, exactly. And I think that so at some point in time, it was predominantly level one support, as we would describe it, right? And then, but what has happened since then, since you and I spoke, a year ago, is definitely the quality and the ability of it to deal with more complex errands has increased. So it's kind of eating up into level two support, etc. As we were going. This is true. What is also true is that throughout this process and having the experience of this, one of the things we started reflecting on is that there is a strong negative sentiment around AI because people feel threatened for their jobs, which is natural. We understand why. And also, if you kind of reflect on historical events where machines took the jobs of humans, it actually usually led to a higher appreciation for what was humanly produced. So if you take like, a lot of things that were manufactured in factories or, assembly lines, like even 100 years ago, whatever, even before, when it was entirely, people were sitting in factories, but they were doing all the work by hand. Once machines came along, a lot of these products at first were low quality, then become higher quality, and then machines could produce at a fairly high quality. And then people stopped doing a lot of that, right? And machines do shoes today, or help do clothes. Not all of it, but part of the process. And
so what you're saying is basically that a human customer service agent is the equivalent of artisanally produced good?
I think partially, maybe not so much that, because what I wanted to get to is that once that happened, we started suddenly appreciate crafted items, right? So today, if you buy a piece of furniture that is done by an artisan or an artist or somebody, is done like humanly crafted, we actually pay a higher price for that than we pay for something that comes out of a standard factory in some, and it's just like manufactured by a machine. And so our conclusion, reflecting on these things, was that like the human connection matters. People appreciate talking to a human. They feel a human connection. There's an emotional connection. And we believe that like this means that there will be a higher appreciation. And if a company wants to be competitive, it will actually be a competitive edge to offer a human connection. And so, but obviously that's kind of a different type of human connection than maybe some of the customer service we offered historically, because this will have to be, high quality, skilled people that are very familiar with Klarna and understand Klarna. And that was not always the case, right? We relied a lot on like outsourced agents. They maybe would come in, they barely knew our product. They were just like asked according to some very strict template to answer like, have you paid or not paid? And that was it, right? And now we want to build a customer service that are people that love the product, understand the quality. And that was true for some of our agents as well, but now we want to make sure that those are the ones that we premiere in the interaction with the customer. So we actually think two things can be true at the same time. The more simplistic, straightforward stuff will be dealt with AI, but there will be a premium to talking to a human, and also, some of the more complex aspects should be dealt with people that really love our products, engage with our products, and appreciate our products, and could be those kind of amazing support people.
Okay, so that is a really good explanation of what's actually happening. But before we blame the media for everything, let's try to figure out why that is. Because if you look at a lot of your past statements, I think headline writers could be forgiven for saying that this is a backtrack. And in some ways, it seems like it is to me. So for instance, in our conversation last year, you mentioned that customer satisfaction was equal to a human in many cases when people were dealing with AI. You also told Bloomberg in February that you're of the opinion that AI can already do all the jobs that we as humans do.
Yeah.
So do you think that you were a little bit too confident in AI's abilities?
You could definitely place me in the Elon Musk box of like saying everything's going to happen in 3 months when it probably will take 3 years. Like
Okay.
You can definitely, like, I'm happy to, I'm guilty as charged on that one. I think though that those two statements, I would argue, are still fairly accurate in the sense that if we take the later one first, which is around like, can AI do our jobs? Now, obviously today, like to me, it's a little bit like the LLM, in my opinion, has reasoning capabilities. A lot of people will like argue, is it reasoning, non-reasoning? Is it just using what it's been trained on and so forth? But I would argue that it has reasoning capabilities. And most of the tasks of knowledge work that we do may be very complex and sophisticated on a higher abstraction layer, but basically can also be divided in smaller reasoning tasks that are more basic, right? And so the point is that like if you ask an LLM like, give me the best way to recruit people, right? Like you might give a very high level answer. It might not actually be so perfect or whatever. But if you give it a very small concrete challenge and say, tell me what you would expect to see at the front of a house, it will be like doors and a window, and there will be no hallucinations. It will always be accurate in that reasoning exercise. And so my point with stating that is just that, like, the challenge right now for the technology is how do you take large complex problems and break them down in smaller reasoning challenges that an LLM is already capable of performing. And I think to some degree, if you look at deep research, how that actually technically works, it is basically what it's doing. It's just taking more time to think, and it's doing more smaller tasks that then it aggregates up to answer. And that's why we get higher quality responses than we would get with an instant prompt response historically. So I think it's just a continuation of that as you kind of extend that. You could argue that the core technology in place already is capable of doing a lot of our jobs. It's just that we haven't figured out exactly yet how to set it up and configure it, and how to build like the tools around it to allow it to perform those tasks entirely, right?
I just want to make sure that I concretely understand what's going on with the AI customer service rollout. So when we last spoke last year, you said it was doing the equivalent of 700 full-time employees.
Yep.
Now, even though you're going to basically hand over some of the tougher tasks to humans, you're saying that you've expanded that to do the work of 800 full-time employees.
Yep.
Do you see that? So can you just confirm that? And do you see that number of full-time employee equivalent work going up?
I think it will continue to go up, because what's happening basically is that, and that's also when you ask me like the customer satisfaction is equal. But the point is, was it equal on the most basic tasks, or was it equal on the most complex task that our customer service would get? And it was obviously the average of that. So to some degree, if you think about it, a person working in customer service, to make it very concrete, a person working in customer service, and I think all of us have had that experience. You're chatting with somebody, let's say you chat with somebody in customer service. For efficiency, as much as any company may claim it's not true, that agent will have 5 parallel conversations going, because you as a customer may also be slow and you may be busy with other things. So you're not going to write all the time. So that agent is not going to sit dedicated to your chat alone. He or she may deal with 5, 6 at the same point of time. But that also is going to slow it down, because when you actually do write to the agent, they may be busy in writing an answer to somebody else at that point of time, and that slows it down. And that's why the average time is 11 minutes, or used to be 11 minutes for us. It was to a large degree due to that, but it makes sense. Like, I'm not surprised that all companies do it that way, and it makes sense for our customer service agents as well. Now, when you have an LM, it can answer instantaneously. So if you ask a very simple question, like, have I paid to Klarna? That question will get an instant answer. Our average time for such errands dropped to 1-2 minutes. And obviously that customer, I would argue, is more satisfied with the AI experience than with the human agent experience for that very simplistic task. But when you go to more complex questions, like very complex questions where AI may not be capable of answering, I would argue that the satisfaction is higher with the human agent than it is. But the average may be the same across this, right? So what we're seeing is...
But the numbers, yeah.
Exactly. But the AI, so the numbers are rising. The AI is becoming, thanks to, we are enabling it with better and better tooling. A very good example of that would be, one of the most complex things to answer is when a customer gets rejected by Klarna, because it's a sensitive matter. Why was I not given credit? What is the reasoning for you rejecting me? And so forth. A year ago, our AI could not answer that question because it didn't have full access to all the data. It couldn't take into consideration the sensitivity of how to deal with such information in order to help answer to a customer such a question. Today, we've enabled it to do so, and it's actually, people are, it's allowed us to answer much more complex errands. So that's an example of something that it couldn't do, and that's why that number of the job equivalent is going to rise. At the same point of time, we think every customer of ours should always be able to click a button that says always human. And would they have a preference to speak to a human, they should have the right to do so.
Okay. I want to ask you a couple questions before we leave. I want to ask you about this Chamath tweet. I think we have to talk about it, because a lot of people have inferred this move to be that we're now seeing proof that customer service cannot be done by AI, and it's just the nature of the technology itself. Here's Chamath. Not nearly enough people are talking about the implications of Klarna rolling back some of their AI bets. Not knowing any of the details, I can guess why. Replacing determinism or humans with probabilistic code is fraught with edge cases and require many new ways of software development and process engineering that aren't well solved yet. The implication to an entire generation of AI apps will be severe as more companies come to terms with the difficulty in getting products to work reliably in production with AI in the loop. Customer service may be the first funeral signpost. Basically, he's saying AI is probabilistic, not deterministic. You can't rely on it for customer service, and Klarna learned the hard way. Now, you responded and told Chamath, hey, it's not really true. But I want to hear your response here on the show.
My response is not true. Oh, yeah, that we didn't roll it back. Yeah, that's right. No, well, he's obviously a very, very smart man, and he understands this at a very deep level, which is, very impressive. This is obviously a challenge that we faced, and my impression, because I've been trying to be quite open with what we've been doing, I've been describing what we've been doing also. Partially I've been describing like how do we model data and what are the internal workings that we try to apply to kind of accelerate us to the next level of using AI. I have highlighted these in some tweets. And the challenge between probabilistic and deterministic is very, very true. And this is exactly the problem that we internally are tackling right now. And we've been working on that for over a year because we had that insight already a year ago as we've been testing and we're very early leaning into the software. We saw that exact challenge. And we've been working for a long period of time of how we are going to solve that. When we look internally, we believe we have a solution that in a prototyping and demos work, but now needs to go into full production. And it seems to be solving this specific problem that he's describing. And I hope that we will be able to bring it to market very soon to prove that we believe that it's been partially solved.
So what you're saying basically is that, yes, this is a real issue, that what generative AI is doing is making probabilistic sort of guesses as opposed to deterministic, pulling from, a logic tree. And that can be an issue with customer service. However, you're saying that this is a solvable problem. Am I capturing that right?
It is a solvable problem. Now, the question again, we can come back to, is it an Elon Musk prediction to say we will launch something in a few months, or is it that's a different topic? But yes, it's definitely a solvable problem. It's just that we see clearly as we've been hypothesizing and we believe found a solution to that problem. The challenge with it is it requires a new way of thinking for the people building the systems. Even if more and more is coded by Cursor and other parts, you still need the humans that are working on this to adopt new ways of thinking and how they build systems, how they build data models, how they build all these things. And that in itself is actually one of the biggest challenges because it is very hard because all of us are kind of, based off 20 years of working in a particular way. And now suddenly all of us needs to think differently.
Okay, I definitely want to have you back to talk about that in particular. All right, let's wrap with this. Artificial intelligence, your company you've said you wanted to be the guinea pig for basically generative AI in all sorts of applications. People have seized on this moment and said, aha, Klarna can't make it work, as what did Chamath call it, a funeral post? So I'm just curious from your perspective, why do you think so many people are so eager to find data points that show that this generative AI moment is just not going to work?
I think there are probably multiple reasons. I've seen there are I think at the core of it is fear, right? And I have also tried to be honest with it myself in some of my posts. I'm also, I also look at AI with some fear, right? Like I also think, but I think it's just a question of when you face something unknown or something that is a little bit scary, you have two options of how you apply yourself as a human being. Either you kind of lean away from it and say, that's scary. I don't want to know of it. I don't want to use it. I don't want and I cherish if somebody tells me that it's not going to work or that scary thing is going to go away, I'm going to be all over those posts and cherish that, exactly what I said. It's scary and it's bad and I don't know what it is. My approach, however, and what we've been encouraging people to do at Klarna is to lean in, rather say, what is scary is what we don't understand. So let's try to understand this as good as we can. Let's learn what this can be used for and how. And by doing so, I think it has reduced the amount of fear. It's not that I don't have concerns of what the implications for society may be or, future state, but I leave those to, the more futuristic philosophy conversations for a dinner. And at work, I try to focus at the practical applications of this in our industry and what it means for how we can serve our customers. And in that case, I think leaning in is the right thing. You have to lean in. This is a technology that every company has to lean into and learn, and then it becomes less scary as well.
Well, Sebastian, I always enjoy our conversations. Thanks so much for coming on and clearing all this up.
Thank you, Alex. Good to have you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and we definitely got to get you on to talk about Google's valuation, because we've been talking about your tweets on the show every week as you go back and forth trying to figure it out. So come back soon, and thanks again for making the time. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we'll see you next time on Big Technology Podcast.